Okay. Want to make sure all the council's on. I think we're waiting for Kevin.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Kevin's on.
Yeah.
I just talked to him a second ago, so he was just waiting to get in. So I'll make sure that he's.
I'm on the phone with Kevin right now.
Okay.
Rob, what is going on behind you, Rob?
Lighten the mood a little bit. That was the old Tiger King, and his solo there,
Okay.
loving his tigers.
The Tiger King.
It's almost as bad as a library in here. Not that that's a bad thing, I guess.
Vendelin, can you let Councilmember Barnes in the meeting?
I'm in.
Yeah.
He just did.
Already done.
Okay, we're good.
Sorry, people.
No problem, Councilman.
Technical difficulties.
No problem.
It's a little UE right there is what I'm thinking, huh, Kev?
Okay.
What's that?
We're glad to have you in is what I meant to say.
Okay.
Sorry, I misunderstood instructions earlier, I
We're
guess.
good. All is well. Okay, we'd like to welcome everybody to the American Fork City Council meeting on this April 14th of the year 2020. We, pursuant to COVID-19 federal guidelines, this meeting will be conducted electronically. You may watch the meeting live stream at the above noted link. Email public comments to the link as well on the screen prior to 5 p.m. the day of the meeting for them to be read into record by the city recorder. We have posted this agenda on our city website and in various locations, and we will follow the agenda as outlined. We will first begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will stand and I will move my desk, and I feel satisfied that the flag in the back, and I will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And then we will have an invocation by Councilmember Christiansen, after which I will conduct the roll call. If everybody please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Councilman Christiansen.
Our dear Father in heaven, we come before thee this night with gratitude in our hearts for this beautiful land in which we live, for this beautiful community, for the freedoms that we enjoy, for the opportunities that we have to serve those in our community. We pray for thy spirit to be with us and guide us and our families and all of our responsibilities that we have. And we ask thee to be with us and protect us, that we may be wise and good stewards, that we may be willing to be civil and to listen and look to the good of the greatest number of our residents. We ask for thy spirit to be with us, touch our hearts, in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you for that prayer, Councilmember Christiansen. I'll now conduct the roll call. Councilmember Christiansen.
Here.
Councilmember Shelton.
Here.
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Councilmember Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Here.
Item number 2 is reading of public comments. We have received one public comment, and I'm going to defer to Tara Lynn, our city recorder, to read that in.
Okay, this comment came from Heidi Rodeback. Dear Mayor and members of the City Council, as you know, American Fork, together with the rest of the world, is facing an unprecedented crisis. I'm writing to thank you for moving swiftly, intelligently, and compassionately to manage public safety and health during the coronavirus outbreak. I've been impressed with the decisions I've seen. I love that you're keeping parks open while closing playgrounds. I love that you're making City Hall available for Zooming weddings, ceremonies, and other family events. I'm grateful for the good job you've done getting the word out, and I salute you for making the tough decisions that keep the city finances solvent and the essential services running. As chair of the library board, I wish to thank you especially for keeping the library open, even at reduced hours. Demand for library services is as high as it has ever been, and I want to commend Cassandra Crane, our library director, and her staff for their resourcefulness in meeting the demand. I'm so impressed with them for consulting with the Utah County Health Department and designing ingenious procedures for the safe checkout and return of library materials. Last Tuesday, I was able to go to the library and return my books by standing a carefully spaced line. I was greeted from a 6-foot distance by the always smiling and always helpful Lori Bonner, a member of our library staff. I was told my books would stay in quarantine until sometime this week when they would be safe to recirculate. Then the next day, I was thrilled to be able to pick up a new book I had placed on hold. The library's online services enabled me to place the hold. For pickup, I drove to the curb by the main entrance where another cheerful librarian retrieved it for me, wearing rubber gloves and keeping it contained in a plastic bag. It felt a little bit like Mars. Buck Rogers meets Mayberry. Meanwhile, our children's librarians have been uploading live story times to YouTube, keeping our youngest children active and engaged. Other residents have been checking out increasing numbers of ebooks, thanks to the library's quick thinking reallocation of the collection budget. I'm grateful to the library staff for meeting so many needs and to the city for keeping the library open, even on a reduced budget through these tender times. Each year, the American Fork Library circulates nearly 400,000 items, including books, ebooks, magazines, and multimedia. In a typical year, our library staff responds to some 19,000 reference requests. The demand continues now through this period of self-isolation, and we have learned through past experience that the demand will only accelerate as the economy slows down. When you lose your job, the library is where you go to work on your resume, to bone up on your do-it-yourself skills, to network, and to keep the children educated and entertained. Our library services are more critical now than ever. Again, thank you for being mindful of this need, and thank you on behalf of myself and the library board for all you do to support our library. Yours, Heidi Rodeback.
Thank you for that public comment. Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate it. We'll now move on to the city administrator's report. David?
Okay, I gotta unmute my my computer here. Just a couple of things I wanted to report on. The American Fork Fire and Rescue Department has received their official license from the Bureau of Emergency Management Services to provide paramedic, ground transport, and paramedic level interfacility transports from the Bureau. And this is really a great accomplishment because there's a lot that goes into this. Obviously, we have to have the right equipment, but in addition, our personnel have to be properly trained. And they have worked very hard to get the department to this level, and they should just be commended for that. And so it really does mean a great deal to our city, not only now, but for many years to come. Speaking of our public safety personnel, we do not have any of our public safety staff that are have tested positive for COVID-19, even though they have had contact with persons that they know are positive. So I think many prayers are being answered just to keep our public safety staff clear from those kinds of that danger. And I hope that continues to be the case. We have no city employees that have contracted COVID. So, but we are on, the state of Utah still has a a recommendation from the governor to continue social distancing. And because of that, some of our programming, especially in recreation, will need to be canceled. So our spring soccer programs are, we're sending out the notices for that we will not be having that program this year. And then if we don't start the baseball program in the next week or so, it appears that we will have to cancel the baseball program as well. I just want to let you know that our Public Works Department is engaging full-time. They're very busy. One of the things that they've been doing is checking the American Fork River channel from the debris basin down to the outflow into the Utah Lake. And we have to check this every year, but it's a lot of work to keep the channel, the AF River channel clear of debris. And it's really critical because there could be potential flooding if we don't. So I just want to thank them for doing such a good job in thinking ahead and being ahead of the spring runoff. So as you know, the pressurized irrigation system has been energized. I saw people watering the very day we turned it on, even though people don't necessarily need to turn it on. They are. But this year, our public works crews, the water department did a great job. They had fewer problems energizing the system this year than they've had in the past, which was a really good report. And so, and then lastly, we typically have Arbor Day here in the next week or so, but all of the Arbor Day requirements have been suspended. And so this year, it's not necessary for us to pass a proclamation or to plant additional trees for this year. So it has been suspended, and we do miss our grade school classes that will come and that used to come and participate with us there, but we'll do it next year. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, David. All right, we'll now move on to council reports, and I'll start with Council Member Christiansen.
Well, I wish I could say I'm grateful for technology. I am. I'm grateful that there are people who know how to run it. I am not one, but I'm learning, and I'll probably still be learning by the time we're finished. But I do have to echo the sentiments offered by Heidi Rodeback regarding the library. It's a great resource for our community. It helps mental health, and the people in times of need turn to places like that. And I think they are doing an excellent job trying to help as many people as possible. So thanks to them, and thanks to all of the people who are still working and being the face of our community. Appreciate every one of them.
Thank you for that report. Council Member Shelton.
Thanks, Mayor. I also, think that the library is doing a terrific job, as well as many other departments in the city, adapting to the new challenges that are out there. One that really impressed me from the library is they started doing Facebook Live events with their children's reading time, which I thought that was a great thing to be able to do. I think that in the face of all these challenges that we have, it's awesome to see the creativity that comes out, to the opportunities that exist, not just for this short duration, but perhaps that could be a service in a way that we could continue to provide service to the residents in the long term. I think that's something that would be great to do on a regular basis, just for anyone that is homebound or anything of that nature. If we're learning the technology right now and have that available, it'd be a great asset in the long term. The other thing to report on is had both meetings with dispatch and with North Point Solid Waste. North Point remains open. They are busier than ever. They've doubled the capacity that is out there. It is, they usually see about 400 vehicles a day. Right now, they're around 800 a day. And people are cleaning up their yards and trying to find a place to put all their junk. And sometimes that goes to the dump. On Saturday, I got a picture from the director. It was out past the shelter going back. I don't know what you call that road there that heads north. That will be the eventual Vineyard Connector, but it was 15 cars deep back on that road. And they've had to slow procedures. They're not walking the line. They're more about spacing people out and being cautious, and that's causing bigger wait times. As a board, we're trying to figure out how best to address some of those concerns and get technology maybe up to date out there where we could leverage that a little bit more. If anyone has any concerns on it, I'm welcome to talk more about that offline. The other item to report on is the dispatch. This week is National Dispatchers Week. They're probably one of the most, I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but they are often forgotten about with our public safety just because they're out of sight, out of mind. You usually only hear them when you have to talk to them, and it's usually not a pleasant time when you're having to talk to them. Our dispatch center was the first one in Utah to lock down, and they've done a great job of putting in protocols to make sure they can maintain a safe environment for their workers and to provide that service. This year, they adopted the tentative budget last week. That will probably have a little bit of an increase in fees. We are seeing a really difficult time keeping dispatchers right now, just because a lot of the other agencies are offering a lot more money and they have a lot less call volume. So it's less work stress and more pay. And so we have felt the need to increase some of that pay. And while pay increases don't solve everything, we're also looking at other ways to create a great environment. Not that there's not one now, but just how to increase upon the culture that's there to help maybe have that staying power. So we did adopt the tentative budget. If anyone has questions on that, or if there's any information I can provide to the city on that tentative budget, happy to provide that. I believe one benefit coming out of this is that they are looking to split the fire channel, which is something I think that our fire chief would be very happy about, to be able to have two different fire channels within the county. And just an update, our fire department's taking gifts down to the dispatch. So I'm grateful for the city taking time to recognize them and what they do. That's all I have to report, Mayor.
Thanks for that report. Appreciate it. Yeah, if you could absolutely get with Anna or David on any increases. They're going through the budget pretty tight right now. Thank you for that report. Councilmember Barnes.
Just first of all, glad to be here. When the meeting started, I didn't have anything written down, but I've been sitting here and observing and listening. I've noticed a few things. Mr. Bunker's got a new look, little extra facial hair there. We don't want to let that go by without comment. And it was great to have that letter from Heidi. I'll start this out. There's an old saying, happy wife, happy life. I think most of you have heard that. My wife just loves to read, and she was down there as quick as she could get down there to get rid of the books that she'd taken out before the library shut down and exchange those out. And she had just a wonderful experience getting that done. It went really well for her. And so again, another shout out to the library. And it sounds like they're doing great things with the kids, as Mr. Shelton reported. We don't have kids, so I was not aware of that, but that's good they're doing that. And Mr. Bunker's report, I think there's some really good news in there that he just kind of glossed over. Just want to reiterate it. The contract with the ambulance thing is huge. That's something that a lot of people put a lot of work and effort into, and that's really good to have that sewn up and done correctly. And the COVID-19 report is just wonderful that, yes, there's been some exposure, but nobody's contracted anything. And I'm sure part of that is because of their procedures and their safety. I've seen them in operation a couple of times, and they look almost like from outer space. Sometimes they've got so much stuff on them, but that's good. So they can protect themselves and the other reports. And it's good that things are still happening in spite of all the shutdown. And it looks like things are starting to happen again. I see a lot more people on the road. So maybe some of this is going to pass pretty soon with the warmer weather and everything. And hopefully we'll be through it soon. Just glad to be here. And again, nothing official. I've got a couple of things going with the cemetery committee, but it's a little early to report on those. So that will do.
Okay, thank you for that report, Councilmember Barnes. Councilmember Carroll?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't think I have anything official to report on today. But I just want to say to all of you, staff and council, that I look forward to the day when we can meet together again in person. I am so grateful that we have this platform that we can still meet, but to me, it's not the same. And I don't feel the same way, and that I don't feel the same work environment that when we're all together. So I look forward to that day. And I also, the only thing else I want to say is that I'm so grateful that the city has been able to stay open as much as it has, and all the work that has been doing. I've noticed a few just in my, because I haven't been going out much at all really, and even in my small circle, I've noticed some city projects that have been being done, and it just was so heartening to me that even though so many things are on hold, those things that we can do and still social distance, we are doing. And I wanted to commend staff for that. And that's all I've had to report.
Thank you for that report, Councilmember Carroll. Councilmember Taylor?
I just frankly, for one, appreciate Stacy's veiled comments that she really doesn't mind sitting next to me in city council meetings. So I appreciate the way you went around that, Stacy, very much. But it definitely, it will be nice to get back together for so many reasons, to talk and reason together. And I completely agree. I appreciate the technology thing. For the last 3 consecutive weeks, we have met as a park group and committee. And once again, I commend the hard work that goes into that group to find ways to disseminate those precious park funds. And there has been a lot of deliberation this year. The city has done a great job of helping us. We streamed those online, those meetings online. They can see all the comments, and the public can see all the comments and everything that's gone on. And that group has worked very hard to bring recommendations to the city council, which will be happening in the next couple of weeks. So very appreciative of them. As always, and has been mentioned, and I won't belabor it, but our public safety groups are beyond reproach for me. The great job they do, the way they put themselves on the line, I just will forever appreciate all the effort and work that's going in there. And lastly, one of the places in the city that has been able to stay open, though very cautiously and not every day, has been Fox Hollow. Rick Roberts and his crew up there have done a great job at, the constant cleaning of the carts. And it's interesting when you take a cart and you're with a stranger, you have to take a cart by yourself, and you have to pay full price for that cart, not just half like normal. And people have been willing to do that. We've set up a tent in the driving range so people can come there and check in, and they don't need to go into the clubhouse. We've got spacing across there. So the team at Fox Hollow has worked very hard to make sure that that's open for people to be able to go up and enjoy and have all those safety pieces in place as well. So, these services that we're able to provide, I think, like has already been mentioned, there will be some really good things that we learn from this. And, being able to stream the different things online from the library and different things, I think people will take a greater advantage of it. So there is something to be learned from this, and I do appreciate it and appreciate everything everyone's doing. So thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thanks for that report, Councilmember Taylor. For the mayor's report, I would just like to thank, first and foremost, our residents. I feel like American Fork City is doing a real good job, and they've learned through various things, the news, social media. And, I'm on a call every Monday morning with all the mayors from Utah County, the commissioners, the health department, and then the EOC at the county. And numbers are looking very, very good for our area. And that's to be attributed to all the measures that have been put in place and people for the most part are following them. So I just would want to be on public record in thanking people that have adhered and are doing that. It's not easy, I know, especially when it comes right down into family life and not being able to get close to young children, if that's what it means. And so we are sacrificing. In our key staff meeting today, we're talking a lot about the financial things and what we're doing to record what COVID-19 is doing to the city budget so that we can have reimbursement. But I think equally as important is what we're learning and the measures that we have taken. I have to think that someday, and I hope it's another 100 years from now, that we might have a playbook of things that we have done, that somebody can pull it out. And I hope, and I told them this, I hope they have to brush off an inch of dust off it, because it's just not going to be used. But maybe they can see what we did now and they can learn from that and maybe make it better. Who knows what technology will bring at that day, but certainly they can see what we're doing today. And so I commend the citizens, and I really want to thank all staff. The staff in our city is just wonderful. They are being, it's business as usual in some cases. And I know that there's just an extra degree of sympathy and empathy as they go about doing their jobs. And we know that because we occasionally will get an email that will state that. But I really appreciate staff across the board for all that they're doing in helping the citizens. And we are the example, and we know that. And so thank you for everything. And I just want to reassure everybody that there is just an incredible communication pattern that I have been able to witness and be a part of, that goes from the governor's office to the county to the mayors, to the city. And so communication is the key. And I have seen that start a little slow, but it made quick adjustments. And I have no doubt that we could get right on the phone and call the governor's office and get answers, right? Probably from the governor himself. And I really appreciate how he is leading out, the manner in which he is teaching and guiding our state. And I wanted to just make sure that you know that I know that. So that is the mayor's report. We'll now move on to the common consent agenda. It is comprised of the 4 items that are before you at this time. I won't go into detail as reading them. If there's any questions from staff regarding them, there has been no need to change the additions to the minutes that have been reported to Tara Lynn. So if there's no questions, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved, Mayor.
I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor to approve the common consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
I'll second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, now move on to the action items. Item number 1 is ratification of city payments from March 24th, 2020 to April 7th, 2020, and approval of purchase requests over $25,000. Any questions for our staff on the bills to be paid by the city?
No, Mayor, I will move to approve the city payments and the purchase request over 25,000.
I have a motion by Councilmember Carroll,
I'll
Second.
second by Councilmember Shelton. Any further discussion?
One thing I was going to ask there, Mayor, is I was looking kind of at the calendar and seeing how we traditionally do our budget meetings. I'm sure that's going to be adapted as we go through things. So just I was wondering if an email could just come out reporting maybe how we see that looking in the next little bit leading up to June 30th and that adoption date. That'd be helpful.
I would expect one. I think that it's been worked on for about the last 3-4 days,
Okay.
almost all day long. But yes, we will send that out as well.
Awesome.
And we'll have work sessions leading up to that as well. So thank you for that comment.
Great.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, and I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, item number 2. It's related to our public hearing, is a review and action on an ordinance approving the vacation of a portion of an easement at 927 West, 980 North, Lot 15 of Cotton Heights Subdivision.
Mayor, I had a question on one of the statements that was read during the public hearing. It seemed like rather than vacating that entire easement, they were just vacating 5 feet of the final 10 feet. But one of those, I'd have to go back and look at it again, stated that they reserved the right to come back in. Did I read that incorrectly? And reestablish that easement if needed? I may have just brushed over that too quick, but it seems like that was mentioned.
Scott, can
No.
you answer that one?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm not sure, was that, Councilman Taylor, was that one of the letters that you were referring
Yes.
to, or?
Yes, that was one of the
Okay, so
letters.
I may not have seen that. Basically, let me tell you just generally what this is. We've brought a couple of these before. The old standard was a 10-foot easement. And so those went in all over the city. And this is just one of those places that in conferring with the council, we said, why don't we just, as people ask for them, if they do, we'll deal with them one by one as they come in. And that's what this is to reduce it to the current standard, which is 5 foot. And so that's all this is. And we make them go through and get the various utilities to grant, make sure that they're okay with it. So I'm not sure, that's the background on this item. I'm not sure I saw that. You may be right that that's what it says. I think though that if it's vacated, it's vacated. They would have to ask for it back, and that would be a whole different situation.
That's probably a misread by me, but I just wanted to bring that up. So
Which letter was it? Do you remember which one? I can look at that.
I don't know. It seems like it was Rocky Mountain Power, but I'm not. I'd have to go back and look.
Okay.
Scott,
Yes, sir.
just to make sure, when that's a property line with 2 homes, it's 5 feet on each home's property, correct?
That's correct.
So the total is still the 10 feet.
Total is 10, but the prior standard back out of a year or 2 or 3 ago, whatever it was 10 feet on each for
It was
20.
10 on each side, but it's a total of 10, yeah.
Well, it was 20, now it's 10.
Yeah, it's
Or
10 now.
5 on each, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm scrolling to find that letter. I'm almost.
It's on your screen,
It's on
Scott.
the screen.
Oh, okay, there it is. Now I got to get rid of all of you real quick so I can see it. Okay. I mean, they may have to ask Sherilyn of her opinion, but the way that I would read that is it seems to me they're saying they maintain the right to locate their facilities within existing utility easements upon this property. In other words, if there's another easement, they're saying they still have the right to put it there. I don't know.
That along with they have the right to continue using the 5 feet that will remain after
Okay.
the vacation of the other 5 feet.
I think this lets the homeowner still build their pool, vacates this 5 feet and would let him build it. I think it looks okay to me. Sherilyn?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that this shouldn't be a concern. As I read this, Rocky Mountain is is consenting to the release of that easement.
And there's been other pools that have been built within the city where we encroached more than 5 feet. I mean, where we vacated that whole back property line altogether. So the only question I had is on this property, doesn't show where any of the utilities currently are or anything like that. The only question I had is, to our knowledge, is there anything running back behind there?
No, to our knowledge, there isn't, and usually there isn't. It's very rare that there is one. It's just typical, a utility back there. This is just gives us and the other dry utilities the right to do it in unusual circumstances.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. All right. If the council's comfortable, I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the ordinance approving the vacation of an easement at 927 West, 980 North.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor, second by Councilmember Barnes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, item number 3 is a review and action on a memorandum of the understanding regarding the Lake City Row development. I'm going to have Adam, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of lead us into this, and I'm going to even say if maybe just the processes that we've went through to get to this point.
I can speak to what the Planning Commission did. I mean, they recommended approval of this, and what they really looked at was, what I discussed with them was the parking that the applicant's requesting. They're requesting to use a reduced standard for studio and 1-bedroom units, and then 2-bedroom and above is the current standard. And then also basically under no circumstances would anything go under the 1.8 per unit. The Planning Commission felt that this was agreeable, and they recommended approval of that. The other items in the agreement deal with reimbursement of 620 South, and then also construction of units, basically contingent on a water line that will go through the area, which Scott's an expert on discussing that, and he can chime in there, but I can answer any questions regarding the parking and whatnot.
Mayor, perhaps I can add a little bit of background on this. MDP Land is essentially a master developer of this area. They've already sold off a number of parcels. That's why there's so many parties to this memorandum. Essentially, they're looking for, in this particular zone, Adam, you may have to help me with the right term here in our code as far as the parking. This would be, they'd be permitted to have a shared parking agreement based upon the zoning in this area. However, in order to get that, they have to bring in site plans, and each site plan has to come in and be reviewed individually. This is them coming to the city and saying, hey, we're going to be seeking this reduced parking standard, but we don't want to go through the long process. We don't want to go all the way to the very end and find out the city is not going to even consider a reduced parking. They don't want to go through the whole planning process and site plans and everything else just to be told no. And so for that reason, they're looking for this memorandum of understanding, really to say, yes, we've reviewed this, unless something changes, because our hands aren't tied to this. It's just a memorandum of understanding. But unless something changes, this is generally speaking what the city is inclined to do. It kind of gives the developers a little bit more security and desire to kind of to draft their site plans and prepare those site plans and avoid the cost of having to redo them over and over if the city changes its mind or isn't inclined right out of the gate to do a reduced parking standard. That was the biggest piece of this MOU was the parking. From there, we kind of added some of these other issues in, for example, the water infrastructure, giving them a heads up that, hey, we're kind of in a crunch with the water right now. You're going to be limited to the number of units that can be developed until we figure things out. The road infrastructure is really just making sure that the city gets what it needs as far as 620 South. And then the reimbursement piece is essentially just saying, we're going to reimburse you the way we would anybody else. It's getting that in writing, just so they're aware that we're not doing any special favors as far as reimbursement is concerned. But again, the big piece on this MOU is the parking. That was the initial reason for addressing this MOU to begin with.
You know what? I thank you for that. I'm going to, David,
Yes.
I think just, I'm going to have you read that letter by the developer, just to put it into public record as well. And I know we'll have more to talk about, but I think it's worthy of just including that.
Great. I'll do that. So this comment was received by Buck Sweeney. He is a partner in MDP Land. Mayor Frost and Manager Bunker, I wanted to provide a narrative to explain parking, which I'm guessing will be the likeliest MOU question for the council. Here's some information about 1.8 works in this context. 1, Lake City Row has a lightweight mix of apartments, lighter than the city has seen before. By lightweight, we mean that a large percentage of our units, almost 50%, are studio and 1 bedroom. These units generate substantially fewer trips, less parking demand, and less water demand. As a result, at 1.8, we expect to be overparked on the sites. 2, there are additional parking protections in place, parking insurance, if you will, for the city. Because Lake City Row is a mixed-use development, we will have office areas that share abundant parking with residential areas. This is a highly compatible shared parking situation, office and land use, residential land uses. Because the office parking is vacated exactly when residential parking demand increases. Lake City Row will have a shared parking plan wherein all office commercial plans prioritize, design, and provide shared parking amenities with adjacent residential areas. 3, new on-street parking will be delivered by Lake City Row in the heart of the project as Quality Drive and 860 South are built. These spaces are not counted in the 1.8 on-site parking tallies for the individual projects, but they add substantial quantities of new parking inventory to the overall project. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you, Buck Sweeney.
All right, council, any questions you have for staff or amongst ourselves with this MOU?
I was gonna say the parking, remind me what is this a reduction from? What is the standard?
The standard right now is 2.25 per unit. Basically, it's 2 spaces per unit and then a quarter space for visitor parking.
Okay.
I know when Buck had originally approached us about this late last year, if I remember right. And in that meeting, we told him we'd be willing to do a work session on this and talk about it. I know he's emailed us a couple of times, seeing when he could get that work session. I think to move forward with this development, it'd be helpful for them to have a clear direction, even more above the MOU. I mean, the amount of money they're looking to invest on a non-binding agreement on a parking that's going to be a different standard going forward. I think that's something we ought to take a look at. I mean, I'm happy going with the MOU, but I think sooner than later, we really need to have that discussion as a council particularly if other places around the city are looking to do something similar to this. And so if we go ahead and approve that, I would love to have a meeting sooner than later to really dive into this and see if it's something we're going to do before the developer gets too far into it, because I'd love to make sure we give them the heads up sooner than later if we decide not to move forward with this.
Okay, thank you.
And then the, oh, go ahead, Clark.
I was just going to say, just as a rule, I am just patently against reducing parking spaces. We always, you know, the developers come in, and I appreciate what they say and do, but you can drive down in the areas, you know, behind Big O Tire and those down there. All of those same arguments were brought forward. They're always brought forward that there's only this many parking spaces, that our tenants are going to be different. And go down there and look at the amount of cars that are illegally parked on those small roads, up on the sidewalks. It's just, I'm just really reluctant to reduce it. You know, I know space is money. I get all of that, but it's a complete nightmare in those areas. You can drive to any one of them in our city and in other cities. My son just bought a home in Vineyard over in the water, whatever it's called over there. And there are cars parked all over the place, and there's not even sidewalks in those areas. It's supposed to be illegal. I really have a hard time reducing parking spaces.
I have to agree. It's something that's been a concern for years, and people always promise things, and they may sound good, but even if they're good at that particular time, you have to watch out for the precedent that you set.
And I think that the way that I look at this a little bit is we've got the reduction, but then you got this shared parking agreement. And we've looked at these shared parking agreements, one being with Woodbury down there by Cal Ranch, and trying to get that executed and things of that nature. I would just like to give more clarity. I'd hate to give any false signal for an investor to go out and start putting money to work thinking that this is a done deal. And that's why I think a work session to give that clarity. If we're going to change the code, let's change the code. But I hate to signal to someone, hey, here's a memorandum of understanding, whatever that means. I feel like that's a somewhat green light, even though it's non-binding, to move forward. And again, I'm happy to do that now if that's what they feel like they need to move on. But I feel like we owe them an obligation to keep that commitment we made to them late last year, to hold a work session sooner than later, to let them know, hey, either this is a go or it's not. So you can start looking at how to develop that property.
I think that's why they've moved forward with this, is this gives them that comfort level to continue moving forward.
I think they would probably prefer having it in writing in an ordinance where they can actually have some legal backing on it. I think this was done just because they hadn't been able to get that work session. And so this was the next best step to try to get this project moved forward. So if we could work on getting that work session and give them some clarity, I think we would see a project that may hit a better timeline, and a project that we would all agree on, that would work for that area.
Good point.
The other item I had just to bring up on it is on the water. That's another one that I'm concerned about. Again, you know, nothing is saying that we're binding by this, but I hate to be giving any kind of a false signal. I know we keep talking, and this is part of our, is it 4 or 5 phases of our water line project that we're talking about. And a lot of it's going to be contingent upon 200 South and what happens with that. And I didn't know if we had any update. I know we've kind of been waiting on the school district and understanding the circumstances we're in right now with COVID and everything, but have we heard anything back and a timeline on that for 200 South?
You know, we'll have that on a different agenda. We can talk about it specifically then, if you would like. But
So I just had the question, where we at in the process with it? Because this goes right hand in hand with that. If we don't do 200 South, we've got to find a way to finance it. And this is part of that construction project.
Actually, Councilmember Shelton, this project is not part of 200 South. So this would be part of phase 2, 3, and going down through 600 East to Main Street and then
Right.
down to 620 South.
Right,
So-
but I guess I'm talking about the financing of it is tied to 200 South. So as we put together the packaging, as we've talked about it for the budget, we need that loan through the RDA to do all 5 phases that we need to help construction in both the TOD and down here in this opportunity zone area, right?
No, that's not true. That's not correct. The CRA budget only funds the improvements on 200 South from the
Okay.
freeway to the west side of the project.
Correct.
This would be a different finance package to do the pipeline that would go past the high school to Main Street and then Main Street down to 620 South.
Yeah, and I think as we talked about it in previous meetings, even though they're 2 different bonds or 2 different financing, they're all tied together in the 5 phases, right?
Like, do we need all those phases of water line in order to get the water down to 200 South?
So both 200 South and this project need the lines past the high school on 600 East to Main Street. But 200 South itself, those lines do not impact this project. This project actually has more capacity right now because on 860 East, there is already an 18-inch water line.
Okay. Maybe I remember a meeting wrong, but I remember how all of those had to meet up together. All those water lines, they overlapped, getting that from the tanks all the way down to the TOD. And each one had a crucial element and part to it. And so that's why I felt like they were tied together. As we've always talked about that with the 5 phases being together, getting those crucial connection points all the way down to where we need it to be. And I thought we talked about this where if we didn't do 200 South and some of the infrastructure scheduled for that, we couldn't get this one done as well. But maybe I misunderstood that.
Yeah, it's not 200 South that has to get done. It's 600 East to Main Street. It's the
Okay.
piece past the high school, not the 200 South in the TOD. So the TOD area also needs the pipeline past the high school, but this project does not need 200 South.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for council?
Well,
I've got,
oh, go ahead, Kev.
I've got just 2 quick ones, if I might. This is the first time we've had this kind of a shared agreement. Is that correct? First, as far as parking is concerned, have we got anybody else that we've done something similar? I'm
For
just curious.
for this large of an area, there is a parking agreement with the apartments over in Woodbury. There's that too, but this area is much larger and it's a little more in depth. Over there, this one goes by the number of bedrooms per unit, and then there's a corresponding ratio of parking. The one with Woodbury in the Meadows, that's just an overall general agreement. There's no real ratios in place, but this one tries to dive into that a little more. And so I know there are 2 projects underway that are under staff review for multifamily, and this will help those developers with the level of comfort to continue moving forward on those projects. So again, this is timely in that there are some projects that are underway out in that area.
Okay. Second question. This memo of understanding, I'm a little confused as far as to how binding it is for the city. Does it have any binding authority at all? And if it doesn't have some teeth or some authority or whatever, what's it worth?
Sherilyn, will you answer that, please?
It is not binding. In fact, there's a recital that specifically states that it's not intended to be binding. a binding obligation of either party. Really what this provides is an indication for these developers as to what is expected and what the council is, it's really, I guess, tipping your hand, letting them know that, yes, we're inclined to do this reduced parking. Go ahead and prepare your site plans. But if something significantly changes, or we have one of these developments goes in and it just turns into a mess, there's not enough parking, the council certainly has the right to say, no, we're going back to just the ordinance and the parking numbers in the ordinance. So it's not binding. Politically, it probably has a little bit more of a binding effect than it does legally.
And
Well, that
that's it.
actually goes
That
into
seems
one,
to make sense to me, that politically it does. And I think I agree with Clark on the parking stuff. It's the old give them an inch kind of a thing, and it always becomes a problem. So in a way, I'm a little hesitant, but in the other way, I see where it's a combined thing. So it would hopefully work. It's something we haven't tried, apparently. I don't know if other cities have tried it and if it's worked with them. But then I would also agree with Mr. Shelton there that we really ought to have some good discussion about this, probably sooner rather than later. And I know there's a million other things going on, but I would just second both of those opinions. And I'll shut up now, Stacy.
no, Kev, you can talk as long as you want. I was actually trying to add to something, but you're good.
Sorry, I cut you off before.
No,
Thanks.
no, you're fine. I actually let me think, what was I going to say? Oh, one of the things as you guys are talking, if the council or members of the council know there's things in a memorandum of understanding that they hate or don't like, to me, it seems disingenuous and wrong to pass a memorandum of understanding. Like, to me, it's like, hey, this is the direction that we're going. It's not binding. We're not obligated to do this, but we're thinking this is how we want to go. So if you're like, no, I don't like this, I don't see any purpose to have a memorandum of understanding. That's the purpose of it to me. Can you, Bendeline, I'm only looking at my screen, your screen, I guess. Can you scroll down to the parking section? As Rob was talking, I realized a little bit more clearly, there's actually two sections, right? The shared parking and a reduction. So those are two separate things. And as I understand it, our code does allow them to request a shared parking agreement. Is that correct? And
Yes.
how come that, because that is what when he came to us, that was originally what he asked for. And the details for what that will be, that is not in this. I thought that would be like the main part of what we would need to be looking at. Do we have
I think
any?
the main part in that shared parking agreement is the reduction. So the shared parking agreement is between property owners, not necessarily between the city and them. That's between them as property owners. But
Okay.
what they're looking, the numbers they're looking to use in those agreements or the agreement, there are the numbers that are on the screen in front of us. There's always the option to table this and continue it at a different time. So, there's that you could do as well.
Okay, that actually clears up a lot of what I was asking. So, okay, so what oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I would say perhaps I could add a little bit more to that as well. In preparing this MOU, what they were looking for is a reduction based upon the fact that they can do shared parking for this project. As I drafted this, I kind of insisted on putting provision A in there that says they will have a shared parking agreement. We're not going to allow this reduced parking without at some point having this shared parking agreement. And the reason for that is you're going to have some of these residential developments in here that are high density come in first. They're not going to have shared parking agreements yet with the commercial project that hasn't been developed yet. And so the purpose of having both provisions is that the residential development can proceed with its plans based upon the reduced parking numbers. But then once kind of development happens and build out happens, it's expected that they will have shared parking agreements, which is kind of the reason for allowing the reduced parking, if that makes any sense.
Yes, yeah, no, that does, it makes perfect sense. Okay, here's my other question on the reduction. And maybe this is just crazy to even ask of this, but we look at the site plan as a whole and they count how many parking spaces. How come we don't just allocate it like, hey, if you have this studio, you get 1.25, and then if you have 1 bedrooms, you get 1.5, and just count them up that way? Is it just too nitpicky? And
That's what they're asking for. The current standard that we have is just 2 spaces per unit and a quarter visitor space per unit. So they're asking for those specific
okay,
ratios.
so it could be more than 1.8. If
It
there,
could be, yes, it just can't be any less.
yes, so if they put in a bunch of 2 bedrooms, it would
Then
end up
everything,
being,
yeah, it'll end up being more.
and 2.25 is the standard.
Yes.
Okay, see that, for me, that makes sense. This reduction actually makes a lot of sense because you're basing it on the size of this. I can't imagine somebody with a studio having 3 cars except for at a party or something, at which place you take up temporary parking spaces. So it sounds like maybe I'm in the minority here, but that is why this reduction makes sense, is because it's based on the size, and it's not guaranteed that they're only getting 1.8. They may be getting, if they're building bigger units, they will be building to the 2.25.
Yeah, we basically gave them a floor. You cannot go below the 1.8.
The 1.8 kind of ensures that they're not going to build a full apartment structure of all studios and 1 bedrooms and then only have 1.3 for their parking.
Yeah.
Correct.
Them to have either some 2 bedroom or more units, or they need to have 1.8 as their standard for their studio and 1 bedrooms.
Yeah. See, to me, that's plenty of parking. So if you have a studio apartment, 1.25 seems completely adequate.
Okay.
One thing that we haven't looked at, and of course we can't at this stage, what is the commercial going to be? Is it guaranteed that the people will go home at 5 o'clock? Or might they be having something where they use more parking in the evening for some of the events or the stores that are there? So that's a complete unknown. We have to keep that in mind too.
But the way I'm looking, if I'm reading this correctly, the commercial will still have their requirements for how many they'll have, and these will still have those requirements. And although they'll have shared parking, they still will have to meet those minimums for both of their developments.
There's nothing in here that reduces the commercial standard. That will stay as it is. And we don't have any site plans for commercial at this point, but in their concept plan that was approved a few months ago, in their mixed use and in their descriptions of it, they're looking to do more of an office component where there will be that drop in demand in the evening. So the retail commercial, where they would like to have maybe more of that traditional retail or restaurant, that isn't, from their explanation, at least initially, that isn't necessarily what they're sharing with the residential. It's more of the traditional, office uses.
At the moment.
Correct.
I think
Yeah,
Barbara makes
yeah.
a good point. Looking at this, when we're looking at it with Cal Ranch and looking at it with Woodbury, the devil's in the details of the agreement. And I'd see the agreement having to clearly state that at a certain time, those shared parking stalls, or so many shared parking stalls, are for the use of the residential and couldn't be used for commercial. In my mind, that's the only clean way to be able to do it. But maybe there's other ways to come up with it, but those devils would be in the details there.
I just, I'm happy to have anyone just demonstrate to me how it's different. But I have yet to see one of these developments that does not have a parking issue. Despite how much research they go into it, despite a shared parking agreement, I have yet to see one of these that does not have a parking issue. And if anyone can just rip one off to me right off the top of their head in our city, I will shut up.
I think, Clark, that point well taken. Vineyards just chock full of these types of projects right now, right? And one of my employees lives there and she complains every day about the parking. It's a 3-bedroom home, but there's 3 cars for that 3-bedroom home because they rent out to students. And so you've got 3 people that are driving and one person's left out fighting for a visitor space, and there's never enough visitor space. I don't know if we'll have that kind of student population and single people living together like that. But I think the difference here is the shared parking agreement. That's the unknown to me that may make this attractive, is because the only one that we do have in the city, to my knowledge, of a shared parking agreement between commercial and residential is the Meadows, and that's yet to be built. Having lived in the Patterson one that's there on Main Street and 6th East, I could tell you that, a studio apartment, I could see easily having 2 parking stalls. Most likely a husband and a wife have a car. That's pretty typical. And so I could see the need for maybe bumping that up to 2. But if there's a shared parking agreement where, heck, you got to walk 25 yards or so to park, at least you got a place to park, where currently you get towed or you're ticketed or you're parking illegal. So that's the attractive thing to me, is the shared parking agreement, along with the reduction.
No, I'm with you. I think it's attractive as well. I just have never seen one work. So there's always more cars. I mean, right down here by us, we had Zany Haney come in and talk to us about that road down there. Drive by that road now. That road's packed with cars. Not on their side of the street, but now they're even out on 50 South, just depending on what times. And those are nice 3-bedroom homes. There's 2-bedroom homes in there. I have literally never seen a development that does not have a parking issue. When we come in, we propose this kind of thing, but you know what? I could be wrong.
What is that development, Councilmember Taylor? Is it
The one south of me,
Yeah, what's the name of that? Do you remember?
It's Haymaker, isn't it?
Haymaker, yep.
Adam, what is the parking requirement in Haymaker? Do you know off the top of your head?
They did not get a reduction, so it's just the 2 1/4.
Okay.
So they're parked on 50 South. They're parked on Bamberger. They're parked everywhere down there. And hey, all outside the fence, on that extension of 900 East. I'm not being a bad guy about this. I'm just simply saying I have never seen it work. And so if I were driving the bus, it'd be more like 3, and then we'd have complete outrage. And so I understand that, but I have never seen it work. And I'm please, anyone, tell me where it has.
So
Anyway,
I was
we
gonna say,
can go on.
well, I was just gonna say that to me, having people park on the street is not a problem. Like, that's not necessarily bad to have people parking on the street. People parking illegally on places they're not supposed to park, that's a problem. But if the definition of a problem with parking to me is not having to park on the street.
And I think with that, the problem you run into is what we experienced there with the neighbors, just right where Vendeling's cursor's at, pointing right to that driveway. Those individuals on that side of the street were upset because people, even though it's a public parking spot, because it's in front of your house, they feel like they're entitled to that spot, right? Same type of thing in front of the high school. When you get too much parking there and it overflows into the neighborhoods, you get complaints about that. And I think that's the problem with the on-street parking, is where you feel like it's excessive than what's used to that use that people would expect in front of their home. And this is where you have two different codes meeting up. You got a high density meeting up with single family, and the single family saying, hey, why is all this high density parking now parking in front of my home? And that's where the complaints start to come in. I don't know if
And
it's
why do they hit my garbage cans? Why do they drive over my sprinklers? Why are they parked so tight that I can't even get my garbage can out? Those kind of things. So,
Or they can't even get out of their driveway.
right.
so again, I would love to look at this a little bit further. I don't know if Buck has some concept plans to go along with this to show how close that, if it's something we're looking at, like with the Meadows, where you've got that shared parking agreement close by, I could see that being something that would definitely be attractive to me to look at. But I just hate to give a false sense of security to a developer saying, yeah, we are kind of saying that we talked about this and this is our understanding, when maybe it really isn't a level of understanding.
All right, council, I'm feeling we're a little bit all over. Is there anybody who would like to make a motion of some sort so that we can kind of?
Can I ask one more question, Mayor?
Yes, absolutely.
My understanding is this is all raw land over there, right? At this point.
Correct.
So I guess the thing that's kind of tipping my mind, and I may have been misunderstood sooner, what I said earlier. This is all new development. So anybody else that comes in is going to see it before they build. I understand what you're saying, Councilman Taylor, about on these other streets where they're building right next to existing things and everything else. And for some reason, I'm just trying to sort this out in my mind as being a little bit different because they're not encroaching on anybody that's already there. And I guess my other thought is we haven't really tried this. This is a little different experience from what I've been able to gather than anybody else has tried. And the only way to find out if it'll really work is to try it, but we've still got to enforce it and keep tabs on it and everything else, I guess is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, we don't have the manpower. We don't have the people power to enforce the things. that
I know we don't. As I say that, I know we don't, because I'm one of those that's pretty adamant about the parking problems we've got in every subdivision in this whole city right now. And the code enforcement can't keep up with it, and neither can the police or anybody else. And I realize they're the same, but I don't know if you can ever get away with the problem.
Well, I'll take a stab at a motion here. I'll make a motion to table this to our May 5th work session and ask that we provide the developer an opportunity to participate in that work session. I'm guessing that's probably going to be done electronically, but if we can give him a Zoom invite where he could be able to make that presentation and have a collaborative conversation. And then from that work session, we can see where the comfort of the council is and where to go from there.
I'll second that.
I'll third it. I think we need more study.
I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton, second by Councilmember Taylor. And I feel like it's a good direction, but I would ask the council, and I know that not everybody has a lot. Are you ready we have a lot of budgetary items. Would you be willing to have maybe multiple meetings during the week to be able to accomplish this and the budget that we're trying to put together and present, and all the things leading up to the tentative budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in my case.
Okay.
We're just going to have to buck up and do a lot of stuff because I think there's some pent up demand on things because of all the shutdown and everything. And it is the spring season and everything else. So I think we just need to accommodate some of these things that are going to come up. That's just my opinion.
And maybe I'll amend my motion just to say to any meeting leading up to that May 5th or on the May 5th date. That way it gives you guys flexibility to schedule that with the developer. And if there's a special one that we need to have for this, I'm open to that.
Well,
Hey,
So are you saying no later than May 5th?
Yeah,
Would that be your motion then?
yeah.
Councilman Carroll, did you have a comment?
Well, before we leave this, I'm assuming that Adam probably has some insights on where these numbers fit into the parameters of things he's seen and things he's looked at and studied. And he doesn't have to address it now necessarily, because that sounds like we'll be going into another meeting on that. But I'd love to hear his insights and thoughts also on those numbers and what he thinks.
So seeing that we have a motion and a second, Councilman Taylor, are you okay with that seconding that motion, that modification of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. And take Councilman Carroll that we will have Adam and we'll be prepared, and we will have the applicant in the room, I guess we could say at that point as well. Okay. All right, I have a motion by Councilman Shelton, second by Councilman Taylor to table this. And I will call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 4 is a review and action on an ordinance approving various amendments to section 15.01 of the city code relating to detailed drawings. This would be due to the PI connections. Scott, why don't you just give us a little leader on this?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, Council, what this really is a new detail for these large PI meters for 4-inch size. Previously to this point, we haven't had a detail for anything this big. And the 2-inch detail that's the largest one we've had doesn't work for a 4-inch meter. So why are we bringing this to you now? Obviously, we've had a few people who've come to us and said, hey, I want a big meter for my development. What do I do? And so working closely with Jay in the water division, this is what we've come up with as far as what we would like to have and to see for 4-inch meters. So that's the background, and ready for any questions you may have.
It's a lot of water. 4-inch can bring a lot of water. So thank you for doing this. Any questions, council?
I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance approving the amendment to section 1501 relating to detailed drawings.
I have a motion by Councilmember Shelton,
Second.
second by Councilmember Barnes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, item number 5 is review and action on a resolution approving a watershed agreement for the rehabilitation of the American Fork River. Scott, why don't you just give us a little bit of a lead into this?
Sure. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, what this is there's money out there for various projects to do either box rehab or any kind of improvements along the American Fork River to make sure that we have a good drainage channel that's not susceptible to flooding, et cetera. Some of those box structures, for instance, we've done some repairs, but and they're going to last a little while. But eventually, we're going to someday down the road want to and need to replace a couple of them. What this is environmental engineering that will allow us to do all the environmental studies to enable us to be eligible for future grants. And what's nice is that this is via a grant as well. So there's no cost to the city. It's fully reimbursable to be able to get reimbursed, to do the environmental engineering, to qualify for grants to, in the future, do projects along the river. So there's not really any downside to this. And We'd look for your approval, and I'll try to help with any questions I can.
Sorry, Scott, I may have missed that. The specifics that we're looking to do, did you say some boxes with this
So-
200,000, or what are we looking to do with this?
No,
200,000?
So this item is just acceptance of a grant to do the environmental studies
Okay,
for the river itself that you have to do in order to be able to qualify for other grants in the future, to
gotcha.
be able to do more work.
So no infrastructure now, it's all just study, research, engineering, that type of stuff.
Correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Well, with that, I don't know how the council feels, but I'm happy to make a motion to approve the resolution and watershed agreement as presented.
We have a motion by
I'll second.
Councilmember Carroll, second by Councilmember Taylor. Any further discussion?
The only comment that I would have, and this is negative, and I apologize that it is, I tried to find this last night and I couldn't find it. And then I was getting ready for the meeting about 6:15, 6:30 tonight, and I see that it had been sent out because apparently some people were having trouble finding it. It doesn't sound like it's anything that's a challenge, but originally I was going to vote against it or abstain just because I hadn't seen the agreement. But if it's just an agreement to study it, then I'm in favor of it. But again, sometimes we're not seeing these things, and I didn't have a chance the entire day because in spite of being quarantined, I had more than enough to do to keep me busy the whole day, and it's actually gone into tomorrow and other things. So no excuse, but I just a little concerned.
Was there some technical difficulty, I guess, or?
No, if I could explain, for some reason, when these files were uploaded into MinuteTrack, they were not, there was giving some kind of error. So I had to place them in Dropbox separately, but it came to our attention earlier today that they were still having problems being opened on certain computers. So I had to I basically had to print everything off, rescan it, and then send it out. So there was some kind of issue with the type of PDF file it was.
There's the key word, some types of computers. Mine never work, no matter what the type is or what the file is or whatever. And I just understand that and I live with it.
My understanding is I know it would not open on Mac computers earlier, but we're hoping to have that fixed next time.
I was on a Mac and it opened.
Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second, and I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye,
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
Okay, item number 6 is review and action on a contract for architectural design services for Fire Station 5-2. And again, Scott, I'm going to put you on the lead on this.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is before your review and approval consideration of awarding this contract. I'd like to just give a very, very brief little description of the process, the selection process for this. So we worked together and wrote a request for proposals, an RFP, that we advertised, had a mandatory pre-proposal, pre-submittal meeting where all the architects who wanted to propose on this project could come visit with us about the project. That was a very well-attended meeting, very pleased to see that. Usually when you see that many and the quality of the questions that we got is a very good sign. And in fact, we got 7 proposals on this, which is another very good sign. I like to see that number. So the selection committee reviewed them. So it was the fire chief, the police chief, myself, Aaron Wilson on my staff, and David Bunker was the selection committee. we reviewed and scored these projects, first of all, objectively, without, or excuse me, through the subjective evaluations, without cost, and then through the cost in. Cost we had established is 15% of the total. So Blaylock and Partners came out on top. They had a very good proposal. We met with them, asked them a few questions, follow up. I also visited with them. Mr. Blaylock, by the way, is in the meeting with us right now if we have any questions of him. That is the RFP process, and those are the high level, I guess, details of the process. It's a very good process, followed nationwide, and I feel we had a very fair process. And Blaylock was definitely the number one proposal. So we're excited to ask for your blessing to award this contract, to get going on the design of this facility and move ahead.
Just a quick question I had there, Scott, did we ever reach out to JRCA to participate in this?
So we advertised this on SciQuest. We advertised it on the website. We spread the word out as best we could as we were advertising. Once we advertised and the advertised came out, it was basically they came to us.
Okay.
They didn't put in a proposal.
Okay. I just was curious because they reached out to us shortly after the bond, and we told them that we were going to send them information when we put this out to bid. So I didn't know if we had kept up with that or not. So just was following up on it.
I don't hold me to this. They may have come to the meeting. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have a sign-in sheet. There were several firms that did come to the mandatory pre-submittal meeting, but then chose not to submit a proposal.
Okay.
I don't remember if they were one of them or not. I was thinking so, but
Okay.
I don't
If you don't mind just taking a look and let me know, that'd be great. I just want to make sure that I
Sure.
don't get an email saying, wait a second, I was told you guys were going to let me know and now I didn't know. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
that'd be great.
But I mean, if we didn't let anybody else know and they have to participate in the process the same as anyone else, I mean, do we often go out and invite individuals in that? Is that different? My industry, we hear about an RFP and we go after it. Is that pretty standard that they have to come by invite? Did we do anything wrong there?
We usually don't specifically reach out to firms. I think we can. I've generally made a practice of, I want to make sure everyone's on the same page, and so are on the same equal footing, if you will. And so usually I've not reached out to anyone specific. We just make sure that we get the word out there via methods that everyone has access to, which is, again, the website. They're all pretty much all part of SciQuest, which is run by the state.
Hey, just so everyone knows, JRCA did attend the pre-bid
Okay.
meeting.
Good.
They knew about this. The person from JRCA was named Scott Holmes.
Awesome.
Came to the meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the architectural design services contract for Fire Station 52 as presented and authorize the city to enter into the contract with Blaylock and Partners in the amount of $278,450.
We have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
I'll second it.
second by Councilmember Christiansen. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to know if there are any buildings that of note that we could look at as an example of their work. Any idea?
Sure. In fact, I may invite Kevin Blaylock to go ahead and speak up. I know Spanish Fork is one that came to mind. Kevin, are there any others that you'd like to kind of point to the council as ones they can look at some of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me this evening. You're more than welcome to check out our website, blaylockandpartners.com. We also issued a proposal to the city that had some examples of our work in it. So I believe Scott has hard copies, also electronic copy. We don't have a lot of constructed work in Utah County right now. However, we are the architect for Spanish Fork City's new fire station that's under construction. And we were also awarded their new library building right there on Main Street, which is just in design. So we do have a number of fire stations in Salt Lake City. We have projects really kind of throughout the Intermountain West. Most of our work is focused in Utah. We currently have projects from Cedar City to Logan, Cache County on the boards right now. So it's pretty diverse range of architecture.
That was actually one of my questions. Do you only have a certain style, or you have a broad range of ability?
Yeah, we don't really classify ourselves as adhering to one particular style. We strive for solutions that respond to the context that they're located in. We draw from like the heritage or the history of the place, the setting, the people, really to try to make sure that it's a unique and authentic design solution. So without having a specific style, we also kind of refuse to produce like a cookie cutter design. We're not going to take a fire station that was designed for Salt Lake City or Lehigh and try to drop it on this particular site. We're just always looking for the right solution for our clients.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, with that first name, we can't go too far wrong, right?
Well, I've been calling him Mookie Blaylock, like the basketball player. That was his nickname.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Okay. All right. Have a motion and a second. And I'll call for a roll call vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, item number 7 is a review and action on a contract with UDOT relating to traffic signals and access control at 500 East. Scott, I'm glad you're not in the back row today, so why don't you give us a
No worries. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is an agreement with UDOT. This is one that it's essentially formalizing what is already the situation out there on 500 East. One of the things that really brought this to the attention, if you will, of UDOT, where they wanted to formalize the situation out there, was some of the work that they recently authorized in front of Osmond Plaza to improve the access in and out of there. And so this is a standard agreement. We've reviewed it, believe it doesn't harm the city in any way or the businesses, actually will help the access and the traffic flow along that corridor.
Okay.
A question, this is a UDOT road. Why do they even need something with us?
They want to make sure that we're on board and that they partner with us and that we are working together. I think it's a way to just kind of make sure that they recognize that we're partners. Again, technically, maybe they don't need that because it is their road and the access they do have control over. But I appreciate they're willing to reach out to us and formalize things a little bit more this way. We're looking at a similar one on 100 East as well. We'll probably bring to you next meeting.
One of the things I think it does, it solidifies the fact that the city understands the spacing and the requirements. And that as development comes to us, then we can say, hey, look, we already know that UDOT has this requirement and we've agreed to that. And so, Mr. Developer, as you do your project, just understand there will be no additional intersections unless it complies with this agreement.
Did we by any chance plant a bug in their ear to put this there, or was this truly, no comment needed? I think it's great. We do need another one in there to slow that down. That's a racetrack right now, and with all the development there, I think it's a great idea.
All
To
right.
answer your question, Kevin, yes, we did work closely with UDOT on a lot of the access points on 500 East. So,
And they get a lot of bad press. There's no question about it, but I am really pleased to hear that we are working closely with them on things like this, and we've worked with them on other things. And I think that is really good, because that's how everybody moves forward. Constant finger pointing and bickering and everything doesn't get us anywhere. So good work.
well, and I just want to say thank you to Rob Clayton and his team at UDOT, because they've been very responsive. They're very open. They meet with us often. And Rob does a great job. And we just really appreciate his work there at UDOT and the relationship we have. So it goes both ways.
Out of curiosity there, David or Scott, just to jump in, do we ever see 400 South going through that vacant lot and connecting?
You know,
Yes.
we say yes. Short answer, yes. That is something that we do have on our master plan, is something that we would like to do. In fact, just by chance, the owner of that parcel came in, just walked in here about a month ago. And we had a visit a little bit about it, because he's not planning on developing right now, but he said he's looking at his options and wanted to talk with him. And I made sure to let him know that, yeah, that is our long-term plan, to sometime have 400 South poke through so that it's a four-way intersection.
I think that'll be crucial, and that'll help relieve the pressure on that 500 South. It seems like there's a lot of turning right now on that 500 South road, and left-hand turns coming off the freeway, people trying to get in there versus going all the way up to the 200 South to be able to get going west. And so I think that'd be helpful from a safety standpoint. Do we see that parcel being developable, or is that pretty much going to put that road right through his lot and he doesn't have much to build on at that
No,
point?
he would still have some developable. In fact, he talked to me a little bit about what he was thinking.
Okay.
You know, and he had a couple people who were approaching it. I mean, obviously it will take a chunk of it, but is definitely still developable and redevelopable, if you will.
And then is it worth talking about or looking at stubbing in the infrastructure needed to put that other arm there? Or
So yes, we already had that conversation with UDOT, and they're aware of that. We had that exact conversation with them.
Great, thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions. Fendlin, there we go. Entertain.
Mayor, I'd move to approve the agreement with UDOT and authorize the city to sign said agreement.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Taylor,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Shelton. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Christiansen,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelton,
Aye.
Councilmember Barnes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carroll,
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor.
Aye.
All right, item number 8. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
A motion by Councilmember Shelton,
Second.
Second.
second by Councilmember Barnes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, just to be safe? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you for all the work. Thanks again, George Vendlin, for the technical crew for setting this up and helping us along. Appreciate it.
Good seeing you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Have a good one.
You too.